see how this works. I haven't ever gone live from Facebook Live on Zoom. So.
Well, it says it's streaming live now.
Oh, does it?
Mm-hmm.
It is. It says we're live on Facebook.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Let's say live in the corner.
What'd you say?
It says live in the corner on my screen.
There you go. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jeanette Berry, and this is That's All Well and Good, but I wanted to start to have public conversations again regarding plenty of things. The catalyst being society and conversations that I have with my amazing friends. And so tonight, for the first night of this, of course, my phone's not on silent. Tonight, for the first night of this, I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves. But I have two very good friends, and we are going to start with the only gentleman in the room. Can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Hi, everyone. My name is Toussaint Tingling-Clemmons. I'm from Washington, D.C., also known as one of the best cities on earth. And I am a truth seeker and a freedom fighter.
Thank you, Toussaint. And Alex?
My name is Alex Saint Laurent. I am a proud New York State resident, currently residing on Long Island. I am a social worker by trade and a social justice warrior by passion.
I love it. I love y'all. I recently met Alex while a part of an organization that I'm no longer a part of, LIAFPA, the Long Island Advocates for Police Accountability. And I met Toussaint 5 years ago at a wedding. I don't know which story is more fun, but I love them both. And we are going to just kind of start with the questions. I've mocked up some questions, and this is free. So if you feel like you have a question for somebody else after they answer their question, a follow-up, I'm just here. You can talk as much as you want.
And hold on, before you start, can I just point out you got two saints on the phone? I mean, on this call, and I didn't realize she had Saint in her last name.
Oh, I do. Two saints, but only one's an angel, so, you know.
Ooh, I love it so much. I'm here for it. I am here for this on tonight.
Let's get on with the questions.
Oh, man, that was great. Well done, ma'am. Well done. Okay, so first question, and this can be for anybody that wants to answer it. Low key, when I was watching the debate last night, I was like, maybe one day I'll be able to be a debate moderator. Anyway, thoughts and dreams. Not that I'd want to do a presidential debate, and we'll talk about any of that stuff anyway. Okay, actually, one that's not in the questions that I sent you. Because watching the debate had me thinking about where we are as a society, where we are as a country. And I want to hear from you guys if you think it's working.
It's a very vague statement.
Is well, this is kind of part of the question. Is the idea of America in 2020 working?
Depends how you look at it.
And tell me how you would look at it.
Well, there are two sides to each coin, right? You could look at the way the government's running, the state of our health across the board, probably people's like general happiness, and it's not great. We were stuck inside for like a hot minute. I don't even need to talk about the the state of our politics right now. That's not looking too positive, but I like to look at the bright side of things as much as possible without being too annoying. But what I will say is that the series of unfortunate events that have occurred over the past, what feels like literally a decade, I don't know how many months, it's brought to light new leadership. I'm seeing a lot of people in my circles and seeing it in myself, taking on leadership positions in spaces in which I can only speak for myself, I would have never dreamed to be in. I'm seeing teenagers and take charge. I'm seeing the clarity and confidence in the youth of today, which is truly inspiring. I had the pleasure of getting to know a high school student briefly in New Jersey who's very passionate about social work and politics. And she constantly says that she wants to change the world. And I don't remember being that clear-headed at 17. So in times of peril, it has the potential to bring out the best in us. So.
Awesome. What about you two?
I like her answer. I tend to. It depends on how you find me. I think I'm fairly an optimist as well. I do think America is working the way it was designed, but I don't say that as someone who like I don't think there was like this insidious ploy, like a cabal of guys sitting around like we're gonna make sure people are miserable. Like I don't think that was happening. But you know the people who are rich are getting rich and maintaining wealth. And for people to be rich, others have to be poor and hungry. And so I think I think America is working, and I think too, and we'll obviously we'll get into it, but I think too we have a tendency, all of us have a tendency to be prisoners of the moment and think that like right now is either the best of times or the worst of times, when really it's just the times, and so it's working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But to go along with my good sister's what she was saying, I am really optimistic about like this summer was, yes, it was scary for a lot of reasons, and there are a lot of bad things happened, or that brought out people's people being politicized. But watching, I get to say this now, like watching the younger people be politicized and come alive and organized is something amazing. I'm actually reading They Can't Kill Us All by Wesley, I'm gonna butcher his last name, I don't remember. I'll try to get it before the end of this. But he's talking about kind of the politicization of millennials, kind of during Obama's term, kind of at the tail end of Bush, and then during Obama's term with like the killing of Freddie Gray and Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown. And when we look at that, like Trayvon Martin was killed almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so like there's a whole new generation of kids who were too young to participate when that happened, but now it's their turn. And so like that's been so awesome to watch, see, be a part of, talk to, prayerfully help cultivate. So yes, it's working, to answer your question.
I like those answers. Was that your dog?
Prince says, yeah, Prince also had an answer. That was his answer.
Thank you, Prince. You talked about Toussaint. You talked about was that him shaking? Yeah. I'm sorry. I want to go. It's okay. So you talked about though rich and poor. We can get into that right now. And by get into that, I mean rich, poor, power, things of that nature. So do you think that America, actually you said in different terms that the way that America is right now, if people are rich, people have to be poor. And if people are rich, there has to be a power thing. So if the rich people are generally the ones in power and the poor people are not, though there have been many sayings otherwise. How do we, is this something that we can change? If America is working, is this something that we can change? And then personally, for both of you, is this something that you would want to see changed?
I think to change it would make it not the America that was designed. Not saying that it can't be a new America or a different America, and I don't like new America. That's weird, but it would be something completely different. I hope and pray for something like that. The work that I've done and do for me, even if it's not directly for that, is to that end. Because I think classes and the what comes of economic classes is what leads to the majority of people suffering. Clearly, no, you can't get rid of all suffering in all ways, but I do believe that's kind of at the root cause of the majority of our issues.
What about you, Alex?
My first thought after hearing Toussaint speak was like, oof, I sound like a cynicist. Like, I don't think it's going to, I don't think that that's the issue, power dynamics. I think power dynamics are natural. They exist in the animal kingdom. I think our issue is how we treat those in lower positions of power and abuse of power. I think that a way, and one of the many steps that need to be taken in addressing the way our lower socioeconomic status citizens are viewed and treated within society is by empowering them to have their needs brought forth on the table. I think it's human nature to look out for oneself. I can't fault someone for that. It's by design. I think that everyone should have the right to have their needs heard, though, and valued just the same. Our power as it exists is of the 1%, so to speak. It's consisting and upholding the values of those at the top of a power dynamic. And those are the only needs that are being heard at the table. Those are the only needs being reflected in legislation. And that's the issue. The issue is that we're forgetting those that we don't see around us when we're having those discussions, which is why it's important to make sure that we get representation from those classes, from those sectors of society, from those communities, and have them part of the conversation. I think that providing that empowerment is the first step, but I don't think that removing power dynamics is possible, to put it frankly.
Do you?
I mean, well, just to respond to that, I agree with you. I think there will always be issues of power. I think, but I think we're clear on the class, like we're clear on, you know, a millionaire and the distinction or the power struggle between a millionaire and a homeless person. And I think, I mean, for me, that's one I would like to see gone. I do think, and I agree with her, like there will always be a power struggle because there will always be power, you know. But I do think we can be different.
We're moving towards, people are already voting. I've already voted in an election. And it's often said that our power is in our vote. Our power is in, like, our voice, our vote is our voice. I have a couple of things to say about that, like just quickly, is like something that I've learned and I want to talk about a little bit is voter education and civic education. Because I've said to a lot of people, and the reason that I joined the group that Alex and I were in and where we met is because I realized that even as a 36-year-old, my civic education wasn't a lot. Like I didn't get a whole lot of civic education. I knew that at 18, when I could register to vote, I would register to vote. And I have been a registered voter since I was 18 years old. And so it's wild for me to see all these people just registering for the first time. Even though I don't know a lot, what I've always known is that for me, it's about my community. And it starts there. But there are other things that have to happen. What are your thoughts on civic and voter education, firstly, and then we'll go to the other part.
It doesn't exist the way that it should. It's not valued. I would, with a caveat, before 2020, I would say. I have not seen such a strong push since, going to backtrack even more, the midterm elections of 2018. Since then, I have not seen a strong focus on voter education and civic education in youth. I have not seen that many get out the vote pushes, but I think that we were scared about with the results of the 2016 election, and that kind of mobilized people to put the focus back where it needed to be. But I think something that's not emphasized in voter education is the importance of all elections, not just federal elections. Part of what I do is voter education. I'm the executive director of a social justice coalition out on Long Island, New York Social Action, and we are striving for equitable policy change for all marginalized populations in New York. And one of the lenses that we do that through is civic engagement. So we've done a lot of work on providing education on voter suppression, and particularly why a state that's blue is not free from such acts. We also make sure to provide education on not just why you need to vote in a federal election, but why it is super imperative for you to vote in local and state elections. Those are the laws that affect you on a day-to-day basis. You might not feel the pressure of having a federal election, again, pre-2016, affect your day-to-day life, but it does if you think about it, and state and local elections do so even more. From school board to library board to your governor, your New York State Senate and Assembly people, all of these individuals control policies and procedures that affect how you're able to live. And I think that if people realized just how much of their day-to-day life were affected through these potential changes in legislation that they might not have even known have existed, they would be motivated to get out and vote down ballot.
Toussaint, you have an interesting perspective being from DC, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear what you have to say, period, but I'd like to
So funny, that was the first thing I was gonna mention. So, well, a couple of things. One part, some of my political background is not my own. Both my parents have held public office and ran for larger public offices. And so since I could legally vote in 2002, there's not been an election that I could legally vote in that I didn't vote. And so like you, I've always been registered, even if I wasn't all the way clear of all the people running, I was going to vote. That was going to happen. So, and in DC, it's fairly easy to vote. But yeah, so the one speak to kind of what you alluded to. So being a registered voter in DC, which is not a state. Nationally, in some ways, our votes don't matter, and a lot of people don't know, it wasn't until the 70s that Washington, D.C. residents could vote for president. And so right, that's crazy, right? But so in D.C., I even understand why there's a lot of folks you would assume are very political, and there's a huge, I'm grew up in the political class, so I know a lot of those folks who are active. There's also a lot of kind of apathy because, while we have a representative and a shadow senator, we have a grown person who we vote on to be a shadow senator. They don't actually get votes in the Senate or in Congress. And so I'm a member of the statehood Green Party in DC and have been my whole life, because I've always known that statehood was super important. But to get to your larger point about voting, I think I'm appreciative that people are pushing like folks to get out to vote and to be civically minded, but only because it goes back to something I said earlier. It goes along with people's political education, and it's but one piece of being politically educated. And so, like, I don't admonish people who choose not to vote, because there's a lot of reasons to not trust the system, the state, whatever. But I do think it has to go along with like an actual political education. And so you're right, Jeanette. Like even here, we have to take a DC history class in order to graduate high school. I don't know if they have that where you guys are, but like while we talk about some of that, they don't go deep. They don't go deep enough into what it means to be civically educated and civically minded. And then honestly going further than just voting. And that's like, we have an advisory neighborhood commission thing here that's really actually some really great grassroots elected officials. It's a non-paid position, but for every 2,000 residents, we have one. And so like, they're really on the ground doing the work. And, most of our mayors were ANCs at one point. And a lot of times city council members were too. It's kind of a way to like show you want to be in politics. So it's either for the really young or the really old. It's kind of cute. But it's just the beginning of doing so much work. And so I'm all for anyone being like politically educated. To me, that's the actual important part. What votes mean and how we vote and all of that is, to me, kind of secondary, if not tertiary, to the main point of being civically engaged and civically minded. Because what happens to the people in the house next to me still affects me. So yeah, I don't know. I think that answered your question. I'm not sure.
To kind of speak to your last point, what happens to the people in the house next to you affects you. Wouldn't policy changes that affect a whole community or a whole district also affect you? So wouldn't you want to ensure that you're making sure your representatives uphold your values, or at least values that respect your human rights?
Yeah, I agree to that. But I also think, we keep getting politicians, or we are being told to vote for politicians who, like, the reason you vote for them is so that you can move them to, you can move them after the election. And so I think a lot of that moving comes from being a part of organizations or organized movements that do that. And so, with that understanding, yes, it would help to vote, because I think voting as a block is helpful and good. But I think too, if you're a part of an organization that's doing that work, you can move policy, you can move a politician, you can move, you're gonna say something prophetic like mountains, but that's not.
What?
So yes, I agree.
What other work? You can talk specifically to yourselves or to work that you see other than, being in organizations. What other things can people do? Because a part of my frustration is that at the end, after our president is elected, everybody stops there. Not everybody, but the majority of people stop their civic engagement, because we are like, well, that's done and there's nothing we can do about anything else. And I see that changing a little bit from 2016 to 2020, simply because everybody was so freaked out. But I'm not faithful. Is that the right way to say that? I don't have faith in people, unfortunately, to say, all right, there's still something we can do. There's been so much being done over the summer as far as marching, as far as getting folks to organize and create organizations to push something and make things better. But how do we keep this momentum going? Is the biggest thing for me. We talk about young people, but they can't be the only ones doing it, right? They absolutely need to, but they can't be the only ones doing it, because these decisions still affect me and anybody my age. So any ideas on how we can get people to continue to do this after November 4th?
For me, I share my vision, my vision for society, by sharing my passion, sharing what I care about. I feel like folks gravitate towards causes when they can relate to what you're talking about, whether it's the strife or a shared vision. I think that commonality goes a long way. I was reading a book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and a tenet that I took from that was that it's the job of the oppressed to break the cycle. And without that leadership, we're just going to keep repeating ourselves. So I think that notion needs to be pushed. And I can't really blame society for not joining me on my personal charge towards change, because there's not a lot of education out there on some of the things that we're fighting for. So the first stop on this path towards a different tomorrow is getting everyone on the same page, providing education. And the way that I've been doing that with my team is through tele-advocacy, which is a super fancy word for just using social media and marketing techniques to get a message across in a tactful and impactful way, so that everyone is on the same page. And once you have the general public sharing your vision, that's when you mobilize. That's when you bring forth your call to action. That's when you all understand why it's important to keep going towards tomorrow and the next day and the next day. I also think that, like you mentioned, it's a long fight. It doesn't stop after the election. It absolutely shouldn't stop after the election, but a lot of us are tired. And I think that's something that we need to recognize. And I think that that should be another motivator to have other people join our cause, because some of us kind of need a break. Activist fatigue is a thing. It's a thing that I know very well as a social worker and a social justice advocate. And you need to pass the mantle at some point so you can take a breath for yourself and continue the fight, because there are some of us who work into the night, and it can't just all be on our backs, because the things that we're fighting for affect an entire community. So first education, then compassion, and then we move.
I agree with everything Alex said. I didn't want to get up, but pedagogy of the oppressed is literally like an arm's right there. Like it's never far away. So I love it.
It's right there.
But and in addition to everything she just said, well, one, thank you for talking about like activist fatigue, because as someone who grew up in an activist family, I didn't learn the term self-care until I was almost 30. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was just a part of what you did. Everything you did was a part of that. To add to what she said, I would just say, and this is easy for us to say, because we've been a part of organizations, but there are local organizations doing work. And now, truth is, there's some that are doing work well, there's some that are trash. You kind of have to figure that out for yourself and wherever you are. But that's what I tell people who are ever like looking either to learn or just be active, because a good organization has education happening within it. So, you know, they're teaching you the policy, they're teaching you the theory. You know, if you're a part of one that's really like direct action or, you know, other work. But none of this happens alone. So I think the bad part about when we talk about voting is that, you know, it's super cool to say every person has a vote, but it also makes it very singular. When the truth is, I believe as a collective, and like you said, you know, Paulo talked about the oppressed making them like it takes a collective to make these things happen. And so joining or finding organizations or joining them, and like I said before about just being kind of optimistic about this summer, watching some of these organizations that were small but ready to pounce on the moment, or even ones that have sprung up out of it. I know the few here in DC that have sprung up out of this movement. And I think that's the way that we make sure people stay engaged. I do think folks tend to be engaged when they're afraid, or at least that kind of shows an uptick in activism. And, you know, if you're going to say any good came out of Donald Trump's presidency, it's that people have been so afraid or angry or hurt or tired that they, you know, you kind of get to a point where you're fed up and you're not going to take it anymore. I think there was a comfort, whether good or bad, there was a comfort around the Obama presidency that allowed for some folks to stay on the sideline because, well, you know, like we're good. And probably that malaise would have stayed had Hillary gotten into office. And so like there's some healthy fear that's got people active. So I am afraid of the attrition as well, Jeanette. I think you and I have talked about it privately. If Joe Biden gets in office, you know, like people, like you said, like people taking a break, people taking a breather, which is well deserved and much needed, but also meaning we'll be leaving, you know, some people up to their own devices to make policies that still won't be beneficial to the majority of us or a lot of us.
I might have scared a friend of Alex's and I's in a chat in a text we had, or might have been on a call. When I told her, I was like, listen, I don't want Donald Trump to win again, but things are going to change more quickly if he does. Because so many people are going to now, and that could be true, that could not be true for another reason, but so many people, like you said, if Joe gets into office, it's like, oh, well, okay, we're all right. He's Democrat. And there's so much talk. I'd like to talk about that too. There's so much talk about moving him to the left, and moving these people to the left. But it seems that that's more coming from people that are already there, that don't want either candidate, that don't even want to vote for either candidate. And then we have the idea that if Donald Trump wins again, people will still be pushed because we're still angry and we're still scared to do something. But which one of those? Okay, so what is today's date? October 23rd.
Yeah.
Plenty of places have already started to vote. Which one of those, like just in your heart of hearts, do you feel like will benefit us for where you want the society to go? Because if I ever want to have children, you know what I mean? Like I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking like, all right, if I want to have children, if I want to get married, if I want to do these things, if I want to move to a different city, if I just want my parents to be okay, if I want my friends' children to be like, thinking about these things, which one right now, even if you didn't vote that way or whatever, that doesn't matter right now. Which one do you think is the most beneficial for the America that you want to see?
Yikes.
my thing is, I don't want to, the way you phrase the question, my answer is it doesn't matter, because it's not one person that's going to make or break the difference. It's if there's a Republican president, but a split legislature, you're gonna have a hard time. If it's a Democratic president, but a majority Republican legislature, we're also gonna have a hard time. So I think in this instance, it's important for folks to have a full understanding of how laws come to be, how policies get put in place, which ones, which, like basic civics, we're going back to that education piece. If you have a big picture as to understanding that the executive branch is not the end all be all, that we should also be concerned about the House and Senate. We should also be concerned about the Supreme Court seat that is currently, I'm not going there. It's yeah, we need to look at the big picture when it comes to that. And when we cast our ballot, we need to have that in mind. How policies affect one person, how policies affect a community is not the job of one piece of the puzzle. It's all three, and all three are equally important. Your state legislators are also equally important. Your local electeds are also equally important, if not more so. So it doesn't matter.
We have, oh, hold on one second, Toussaint. We have, I will say in New York, we have, and I can't, like, she's not in my district, but we have a rock star in AOC, right? A political rock star for many people. Mm-hmm. But if folks you can say civic education until your face is blue. If we don't make this sexy, or if we don't make it, I hate the word sexy when not talking about.
When I think AOC, I think relatable. I see someone who's almost my age. I see someone who started with humble beginnings. I see someone who lives, breathes, and bleeds what she says. She is her work. She is her passion. That's the type of leader that I want in office. And frankly, I don't see that in anybody up there. I think that they think it's a game, which motivates me personally to put people that I believe embody that same spirit into seats of office. And if I can't get them to do it, then I guess it has to be me. But I don't publicly speak, so that's a last option.
It's a lie, because you're speaking publicly right now.
Nah, I'm just talking to you, and we have some Facebook friends hanging out.
Okay, I'll take that. Toussaint, do you have anything to say about what you said earlier? And just
I don't know. So I like the idea of AOC and the majority of the women from the squad, if you will. Mostly because of, I'm sorry, my dog's snoring.
Okay.
Mostly because of their age, and honestly their socioeconomic background. When we recognize that the majority of our representatives are millionaires, people who financially the majority of us cannot relate to. Now, AOC and the rest of those women stay in office, 5 or 6 more years, they too will become a part of the millionaire class. But the truth is, like, they're also, and we have to be like frank about this, they're also been made rock stars by both parties, because those names are easy to raise money off of. Whether they actually are, and I appreciate what Alex said about, kind of how she sees AOC, because, you only hear it like one side or the other, that either she's the devil, which allows the Republicans to raise money, or she's the future of the party, we just got to rein her in, which allows the Democrats to raise money. So I don't know. To go to your original question, I really like Alex's answer about I don't know that it fully matters. Because we'll still have like the majority, if not all of these systems will still be in place, no matter who. And neither one of these candidates, and to a larger extent, parties are looking to dismantle any of these systems that harm us. And so, like, I recognize that there will more likely be policies put in place, or even judges, or incremental things from a Democratic president that might, at least, even from giving them credit on face value, seem better for me and to me, or people like me. I'd be lying if I said that wouldn't be the case. But again, for me, and this is, and I think I'm right, but I recognize I could be wrong. For me, these systems are the things that have to go. And so if the president, if the candidate or their party isn't looking to dismantle these systems, then I don't see either one as being the answer. Both would just uphold the system in different colors.
How do we change a system that, okay, granted, I know that this is kind of a big question, but the majority of us are comfortable in this system because we know it, because while we're struggling, we're not struggling like other countries are. We have some sort of freedoms, and sometimes for me looking, it's frustrating to see people that want change but don't want to go all the way. And none of us really want to go all the way. I think the word want might be the wrong way to say it, but
I say my dad does, but he might be the only person.
He might. I don't think he's the only person though.
Not the only, but like there's not as many as they think. But go ahead.
No, that's true. There are not as many people there are not as many people that are on the Democratic side or the left. So if we're center, there's not that many people, I think, on the left side that are ready to be out in the streets long-term, gunned up fighting. I think there are more people on the right side, or they might be louder. Who knows, because they can be louder, right? I think that's a fear that some people have if Joe Biden wins, is that these folks that want Donald Trump to win and continue to uphold his stuff will be out on the streets in more fervor than they have been before, because they are allowed to be, because they are given the opportunity to be. But not a lot of us want to go there. What is it that we're going to have to do, you think, to create something that we can like actually be happy with? And this is like in our lifetimes, right? This can't happen in the next 4 years. But if you're talking about systems, it's not only political systems, it's economic systems. It's and with economics comes culture and comes education. How can we, other than policy, or what do you guys see that can be helped and changed in this society that works together to keep so many oppressed, even though none of us want to be oppressed? What is it that we can do? And like actionable items, if you have them for people watching, like what is something that somebody can do tomorrow to get the ball rolling to help break these systems? All the systems, because I like to think like that.
So you said, one of the first things that you said that stuck out to me is the word want. No one wants to do this. I'm doing work until like 2 a.m, and then I'm getting up at 6 the next day. I'm not sleeping. I'm not seeing my friends. I have a headache 90% of the time. I'm miserable. No one wants to do this. Granted, I love what I do, but I'm tired. But I need to do this. And I think that's where the difference is. I need society to change because I need society to value me. I need my human rights to matter just as much as my neighbors, or my best friends, or um, a random person on the other side of the street. Like, I need to be able to take solace in the fact that when push comes to shove, like a policy somewhere, some government official, some overarching regulating body's got my back. And that's not the case right now. So how do I fix that? Well, the only way that I know how to fix that, which I'm sure is just the answer, is to change the culture. But how do you do that? I'm a social worker by trade. I mentioned that, and something that they teach you when you're getting your MSW is that there are 6 ethics that the NASW runs on. And if I butcher this, my degree is going to get revoked.
No,
But it is. They're going to come find me. But it's competency, integrity, dignity and worth of a person, human relationships, social justice, and service. And something that the profession prides itself on is the value of your client and your client's community. I think that those 6 ethics need to be embodied within our culture. Until that is commonplace in every corner and crevice that exists, every piece of legislation, every loophole, every footnote, we're not going to see any change. We can yell and scream and like until we're blue in the face. We can ask for policy changes, but until it's believed by those in power, we're not. It's yelling into a void. It's exhausting. How do you get that perspective? You start with yourself. You ask questions. You get your MSW. Social work is much more than clinical stuff. If you have any questions, come find me. But you develop a point of view outside of that of your own. You start to value your neighbor, and then once you've got a hold on that, you practice education and you have conversations, have those tough conversations, and you find those who align with you. And then you put those people or yourself into positions in which you can change those policies, you can write those laws. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen eventually. And you need to hold strong to that notion. And when you can't, you depend on your cohort, your friends, your family, if you are lucky enough to be able to do so. And we'll get there. Yeah.
Oh, Alex. That's all I have to say to that.
What?
No, okay, let me explain what I mean by that. I am generally a positive person, but as I've grown, I've become a lot more logical. And so things frustrate me more than they should, because I see the logical way of things to be better. And many people don't think in logic, they think in emotion and what immediately benefits them. So you saying everything that you just said hits home with me, because that's the kind of person that I've always been.
So then you and we go find 2 more people, and we find 2 more people. You don't need to have the faith the entire time. That's not realistic. Yeah. But that's when we tag team. You take a break, you take care of yourself. I'm going to hold the fort down, and I'm going to recruit 2 more. And when you're ready to come back, you will, because no one can ask you to not recognize burnout. That's a thing. But there are people on the other side. I was driving home from a meeting I was at last night, and I passed a car with 6 Trump 2020 flags. 6. Why do you need 6 flags on your truck? But that's fine. I digress. But I didn't make eye contact with this person. I didn't even see who was driving, but I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable with the fact that I felt uncomfortable, that a flag on someone's vehicle that wasn't directed towards me, didn't even speak to me, probably didn't even know that I was Black, bothered me. And it's something like that I don't want to have to go through. I don't want my sister to have to deal with. I don't want anyone I care about to have to deal with. And it's having that motivation that gets me to have those conversations. And I'm lucky and privileged enough to have an education that gives me skills and tools to have those conversations in ways that people are more willing to at least not be obstinate when I'm speaking to them with opposing views. Some of them might even politely agree to disagree, if not see what I'm saying. I think it's going to take patience. I cannot blame people who no longer have that patience, because I would be tired too if I was doing this as long as almost anyone. I literally just graduated. I just felt confident enough to join this fight. But that doesn't, my shiny optimism of a graduate doesn't take away from the fact that the ideology is important, doesn't take away from the fact that us social workers have a perspective that is required in positions of power. And I think until that shift is made, we're going to be beating the same drum and singing the same song.
Part of the reason why I wanted to talk to the two of you particularly, is because all three of us come from completely different backgrounds, of course, but also of what we do and how we do this work. Toussaint has worked with youth. Toussaint's whole family is about politics and working to make things better and for change to happen. As a social worker and an activist, that's your lane, and all of these things can run like there's a huge, if we can look at it like a highway, there is a highway that each of us has a lane in, that we are able to create some sort of change. And I think a lot of times people forget that. You know, we talked about voting, we talked about policy. There are some people that don't care to vote. That's fine. There are some, but then they can do something on the flip side. What if they're an amazing public speaker and they can rally the troops of their community? That's what their lane is. My lane is in music, in education, in the arts. I can do that through my art. I can do that. I can do and make a change and want to let people know that it's okay to be compassionate and vulnerable, and let them see that part of themselves that can maybe get to the point where they're thinking about somebody else. And I think that's something that we tend, not we, but that people tend to forget, is that whatever you're good at, whoever you are, you have a voice in whatever fight you want to fight. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to fight it 24 hours a day. I tell people this too. You just need to change things on the daily to help things get better. Do daily work. It's like anything else. Like, you're not going to lose weight if you don't work out every day, if you don't change what you're eating. You can't have 4 donuts every other day and think that you're going to get healthy, right? Like, I don't know. That's a lot of donuts. That's a terrible amount of donuts. And I hope nobody has 4 donuts every other day, because that's gross. That's like 20 donuts a week. That's disgusting, but that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is, anybody that's listening, you have a lane that you can be in, that you can create change. Toussaint, I kind of bogarted and snuck in. Did you have anything to say to what I said?
Well, so I wanted to kind of speak to a couple things that you had said when you were even setting up the question. So one, personally, I think there is a distinction, or I would like to see more of a distinction between Democrat and left. Because I think while the Democratic tent is supposed to be a really big tent and does house some left, I don't think the Democrats themselves are left. So I would call that more center. Liberal center or liberal. That's my first kind of take. And then I also disagree with you when we say, and I know it's kind of a popular thing just because we see it a lot, and I do, and this is not to disregard their mobilization, but I do think there are people on the left I don't necessarily, and this is why I make the distinction. There are people on the left, maybe not liberals, but who are on the left, who are, ready to, if you will, throw hands. Which is why, like I don't know anybody in Antifa, but I don't think there's a lot of Democrats in Antifa. You know what I mean? That's
Absolutely.
what like there's a distinction between like the two. So I would say that and to add to everything Alex said, even everything that you said, it was very Booker T. Washington-esque. I would add that I kind of beat the drum of either or community organizing yourself or joining an organization. Because again, like, well, so, and I say that with the very real caveat that there are some organizations that claim they're doing similar work that I do not agree with, that I don't like. And I hope you don't join those. But that's that I'm not here to like be someone's political journey. If they want to ask me, sure they can. But locally, there's so many organizations all across this country that are doing excellent work. Like even the mutual aid stuff that popped up through the pandemic has been absolutely amazing. And I've seen mutual aid stuff like all over the country. And so joining these organizations, even if you're someone who's in need of help, but joining these organizations will, one, help further political education, but also gives people a place, a home to then participate in work, because this mountain is long, it's huge, and I don't think we'll see, I think we'll see change, but I don't think we'll see significant change by the time we pass. And it's not to be a pessimist, that's just to break a system and, to create the systems that we have taken hundreds of years. And to destroy them and then create a new and create something that even any of us believe in will take years, like it'll take so much time. We would have had to have destroyed the system 20, 30 years ago to have something in the next 20 years that that any of us would even believe in. But I do think we see it happening. I do think that it is happening. Like, I think we're on the long arc of change. And so you asked, like, what are just actionable steps? Either start doing some, I'm sure there's something around you that you're pissed off about and organize your community, or join an organization that's doing work in your community. So that's my actual actionable items. Also, read Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. There's some really good books out here and groups, to read with if theory is the thing that's going to get you off the table. For some of us, it's the practice and the action. Some of us, it's the theory that gets you off the sidelines. So either way, like somebody come get you, but don't do it alone. Whatever you do, this is not a lonely journey. Like we have to do this together.
Do you hear that, Alex? It's not a lonely journey. Let people help you.
Listen, I'm all for teamwork. I love my team. If any of you are watching, I appreciate you and all the work you put in. But
she was nodding.
Yeah, it's different when it's your life on the line, when it's your human rights. Mm-hmm. So when someone feels comfortable saying it's 11 o'clock, I'm going to go to bed, I can't finish this action guide, I'll do it tomorrow, or your deadline doesn't really, you set it yourself, move it to Monday. I see more public comments being submitted in favor for a policy that demeans me as a human being. I see conversations being happened overnight to put someone into power that's going to revoke my access to healthcare. I see my brother who's, 22? Jason, I'm sorry. I don't know your age. But my brother who's in his early 20s, and Black and driving home from a friend's house, worrying about him because the policies currently in place in our county don't protect him from racial biases when you get stopped for a traffic stop. And it's that kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. So if I'm up, I might as well be working.
I hear you. I agree and I understand. I'm just talking as a friend.
I know.
There are other people that are doing work too.
So I hear you, Jeanette, but also in fairness to her, she was the first person and maybe the only one of us who mentioned activist fatigue.
So. And I'm just calling her out publicly to listen to her own advice.
Listen, I guarantee you, if the second we finish this and I go onto the Facebook, my friend Kate is probably going to be writing something about
me.
There we go. So yeah.
No, it's all in love and jest.
I know.
But the thing is, though, even with that, it's important for people to see somebody as passionate as you doing the work. And a young Black woman doing this work who is as passionate as you are, especially on Long Island. Like, we're a trash hole. Like, I'm sorry, hey, Toussaint, we can only say that we're a trash hole.
Yeah, you can't say that. We can say that.
Oh, my bad. Look, I didn't say anything, actually. I was quiet.
You can gesture to that. It is really hard and difficult work. And I want to continue to try to get people to do the work, especially on Long Island, so that when you have to take a moment, you can trust that there is somebody else as passionate as you, just filling in for a hot second so you can take a nap. That's why I wanted to bring you on, is to give you a public face so that people can see what you're doing.
So, Jeanette, I don't know if I ever told you this story, and so I don't know if this is good or bad, but so I mentioned I was raised in like a political family. So like, I don't take credit for even the political activism that I've been a part of because I absolutely had no choice. Mm-hmm. Like this was just like, it was just like, this is what you do. Like some people, some people are cops. Your dad was a cop, your granddad was a cop, you were a cop. My parents were community organizers. It's part of even how they got the house that they got. They were organizing the tenants, and the tenants, so the landlord was like, how do we get you out of here? And so, you know what I mean? Like this is just what they do. But my dad used to always tell, and I'm gonna butcher it because he would tell us it was like a Chinese proverb or something. I don't even know if it actually was. Probably, you might be lying, I don't know. But he would talk about, he said the way we raised you all was very intentional. And I have I have a younger brother and a younger sister. He said the way we raised y'all was really intentional. And so he said, the way he would describe it was, he said, I got politicized, me and mom got politicized, we got together, and we decided to break this mountain. And so we started cracking at the mountain. And he said, and folks would come, in the story, people would come to this guy who was trying to break this mountain. They were like, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to move this mountain because it's blocking the sun from my crops. And they were like, move a mountain? Like, what are you talking about? And he said, he just keep breaking it. And people kept coming asking him like, but what are you gonna do? Like, you're barely moving it. Like, you can't move a mountain. What are you gonna do? He said, well, I'm gonna train my children to break this mountain, and they're gonna train their children, and they're gonna train their children. And one day we're gonna move this mountain so that our crops can grow. I butchered it terribly. If anybody who knows me is listening, or even knows this actual story, or knows my dad made it up. Either way, I don't care. But that goes to like what you were like, the question you were asking about, like, how can we change it, or what are we changing, or even how you're admonishing Alex for doing work. Like, some of it is having these conversations and teaching those who are coming up under us at least what we know, because the truth is the kids might go in a different direction, and they might be right. Like, to admonish them even for, going in a different direction isn't the thing, but hearing them and giving them the tools and then letting them run with it. And so, Alex even mentioned, like, she just got these keys. And so she rooming, and there's gonna hopefully come a time where she puts somebody in place, or she's talks to someone who then are like, all right, thanks for the keys, Alex, and then they'll drive for a little while or whatever. Whatever the analogy you need, you can move them out on that. That's cute too. But whatever.
You said vroom vroom, and I'm going to use that with her for the rest of our friendship. I'm just
Okay.
gonna send that little emoji of the car or the guy running the vroom vroom. That's gonna be you, Alex.
That's it.
That's it. I have to say publicly, I'm very grateful for the both of you. Now I've known Toussaint longer, but because Alex has seen me yell and get frustrated, and I don't know if you've seen that in me, Toussaint, we have a bond. And because we have been frustrated, it's the same things, we have a bond. Even though we have never met in person, because what up, pandemic? So yeah, that's right. We've never.
So weird, yeah.
Never met in person. But the thing is, and what I'm so grateful about for both of you is you have both taught me so much. Like, I have always been an idealist. I, for better, for worse, grew up Christian and love Jesus and love the idea of somebody that can y'all hear that train?
I can.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, it's a large freight train that runs very close to the apartment. But for better, for worse, I've always had this, I want to see people that are positive, happy, that are willing to sacrifice something of themselves to help somebody else, that are able to look at humanity, and while might not agree with everything from people, understand that their humanity is important. And even if we disagree, that their humanity means something to me, that we have to live together, even if it's in terrible, like, I don't love everybody that's in the world, but I appreciate their humanity. And being able to have conversations with people that are more politically minded than I have ever been in my entire life, like the two of you, has helped me to form new perspectives. And it's also given me a safe space to be wrong, to be loud and wrong, right? And I guess I can put wrong in quotations because it's all learning and I don't know yet where I fully stand. And this journey is ever lasting. I don't want to stop these questions until I can no longer breathe. Like, that's it. Like, I want to have questions and I want to have conversations, and I always want to be annoying to my friends and ask them really big, massive, world-changing questions until I am no longer living. And I want to haunt anybody that still lives after me with those questions. That's literally all I want to do with my life, is I want people to be able to engage in conversation, to ask questions that scare the shit out of them, right? I don't want any of what I think I want to happen. I don't. Do I want to live in a world that doesn't only have two parties? Yes. Do I want to live in a world or in a country where a Black woman could be president without thinking she's going to be assassinated the moment she takes her oath? Yes. Do I want to live in a country that thinks that my body is their ruling, like they have conquered my body and they own it? Of course, I want to live in a society where that doesn't exist. It's not going to happen overnight, but we all, like I've said, we all have a way to create some sort of change, but we have to be able to have safe spaces to have conversations with people like this. And I hope in having this conversation publicly and forward facing, that somebody else wants to have a conversation with somebody that they might know, to read something new, to watch a video, to take a moment to process something that they saw. That's literally all I want to do with my life, is I want people to think, and I want people to think for themselves and feel safe and confident to be wrong, and feel safe and confident with the people around them to be able to have questions. So I thank you two so much. I don't even know if I asked any of the questions that I sent you all, I want to do this on a monthly basis. This is a space that I want to create, and I just found out that this is not on the event page. It's just going live on my feed. So I'll just put it on the event page, and this will also live on my YouTube page. And I want to do this monthly, but I also, this is a part of a larger picture. I also want to start a reading club. So you said that, Toussaint. I was like, oh, look at you, I'm going to say something. I want to start a space where we can come together virtually and read things. It doesn't have to be a full book. It could be a chapter. It could be an essay. I love No Name, and she has a book club, but then she was like, oh, maybe I should just do essays sometimes, because books, some people can't read a whole book in 2 weeks. Yeah. So let me do something else. And so I think it's great. And we have so much knowledge that I want to start a reading club. This production, that's all well and good, but is going to be housed under my thing, Constellation Noir. So every month we're going to have a conversation, but then we're also every month going to have a reading club. So we'll start in November. So if you want to hear any more about that, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JB_SoulNerd. You'll be able to find all of the information there as I share it. I want to, again, thank you two so much for having this forward-facing conversation with me. And I would love you two to, if you so wish, to tell people where they can find you, and also maybe leave them with one reading suggestion or listening suggestion that you haven't mentioned thus far in our conversation. And whoever wants to go first, oh, look at you both looking at things. I adore you.
Gotta peruse, hold on.
Much.
I know you said reading suggestion.
You said reading. First of all, my bookshelf is upstairs, so I have a limited selection right now. So who do I want to be?
One thing that I will say that I read over this quarantine that I really liked was Anand Giriharadis's Winners Take All, and it's talking about philanthropy and the terribleness of philanthropy. So terribleness is not a word, but I would totally recommend that book. It's a great book. Anyone else? Alex, you can also start with who you are, where people can find you, if you want to be found.
Okay. I'm Alex Saint Laurent. I am the executive director of New York Social Action, and that's just about the coolest thing that I do right now. So if you want to find me, find us. It's not just me. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Our Instagram is New York spelled out _social action. We practice teleadvocacy. We provide education on a whole slew of topics. And our graphics are pretty cool. So website launching November 1st, so keep an eye out. And I just held us all accountable because I said that public. Reading suggestions. Elections coming up, so I suggest One Person, No Vote by Carol Anderson. Don't mind my nerd tabs. And The End of Policing by Professor Vitale. So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So now this feels silly. So I guess you can find me on Twitter at Saint_2 TOUS. And you can find me, I don't do anything on Instagram. So you can find me on Facebook, Sharing Black Joy. My name, Toussaint Tingling-Clemmons. That's Toussaint, spelled phonetically, Tingling-Clemmons. And book suggestions, if you are a man, I would suggest Heavy by Kiese Layman, which was really good. Like women too, but like it was a real good exploration of manhood. If you are white, So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo, excuse me. And blah, blah, blah. I think I'm gonna stop there because I can't really make out anything else as I don't have my glasses right now. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thank you all so much, everybody that was watching. I hope people didn't put questions that they wanted answered because I didn't see them. Maybe I will put them up and give them to Toussaint and Alex once this is over, if there are questions for either of them, and then maybe we can just put that on Facebook, or you can record a little video for me because, you know, content is king. I love you both. Stay on. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been That's All Well and Good, but I hope you continue to watch us. I love that we have people on Facebook. I might go to YouTube Live. Keep an eye out for what I'm doing, but I'll always be posting it on Facebook. Again, you can find me at JB_SoulNerd on Instagram and Twitter. I have a website, JeanetteBerry.com. You can find my writing there, my music. Yeah, you can find my writing and my music there. Again, thank you all so much and have a wonderful night. Good night. Thank you.